part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hi, everybody. It's John Tellage from the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast. Be sure to hop on with us to follow all the dramatic developments of the reigning American League Central Division champions. From game analysis to interviews to keeping tabs on who could be the next breakout star. We'll have that and much, much more right here. It's the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe here and join the fun.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
What's good, Breakers? That sound means it's time for Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm your host, Chase Smith, and with me, the NBA writer for HoopsWire.com. He's our Cavs insider, national NBA writer, Sam Amico. Sam, that has been your intro since day one. Are you cool with all that? Is that all good?
Yeah, the website name keeps changing, but
it does.
Mine is the same. So yeah, I like it.
All right, you don't want to do Denny's Grand Slam card holder? You don't want me to add that to the intro?
No, we'll leave that one out.
Okay, all right. Here with us also the man, the myth, the legend, my first podcast partner in crime, Jeremy and Akron, JIA. What's up, my man?
Hey, what is up? You know it's a big show tonight because Sam broke out the glasses. Sam looks like a real professional. He's ready to go, and he only does this when we have big time guests. I'll say that.
That's very true. I want to make sure I get a good look at him.
Sam is looking great. John Sable's sitting on the sidelines for this one. Something about covering sports at Fox 8. I don't know.
TV, blah, blah.
He's a big guy. Shouts to Zach for checking this pod out. We have a very special guest tonight, as Jeremy and Sam are alluding to. He's the Cleveland Cavaliers radio play-by-play announcer. You know his voice well. Welcome him to the pod, Tim Alcorn. Tim, thanks for joining us on Cavs on the Break.
And thank God you don't know my face well, because it's a face for radio. I can tell you that. No, it's great to be with you guys. Sam and I, in my previous stop before the Cavaliers play-by-play gig, had many, many conversations on a show that I did for WEOL radio. So I would grill Sam out on the floor at what was then the Q and now Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. So I'm sure Sam is just licking his chops, getting ready to grill me on a few things.
Yeah,
it's great to be with you guys. I appreciate it.
Sam, how long do you and Tim go back?
Gosh, I started as a full-time Cavs writer in 2007. So I know Tim was at EOL then, but I think probably 2009, 10, somewhere in there. Wouldn't you say, Tim?
I would say easily, because
yeah,
07 was that Cavs finals year, correct?
Yeah.
And so I know we were doing the show sporadically that season, and then listeners seemed to like it, and we were able to get terrific guests like Sam and others, and so from that point on, it became more of a regular show. So, yeah, Sam, we go back a long way.
Yeah.
Wait,
you look a lot older than you used to. I'll tell you that.
Well, yeah, those things happen. Tim would certainly tell you about some of my legendary dining habits in the media dining room. We used to talk about that quite a bit because Tim would see me in there in line like 2 or 3 times. And that was my claim to fame.
So you're the reason they've gone to vouchers now at the concession stand.
They would tell me all you can eat and throw me out anyway.
Gilbert was like, that's too much. Sam Amico's bankrupting me. Dan Gilbert put a stop to that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we go back quite a ways. Those were good times. It was a lot of fun going on that show. It was before I even started at Fox Sports, and I remember thinking at one point, like in 2006 or so, I want to be a full-time Cavs writer, and I want to do radio and television. And I don't know, that sounds very shallow, but I remember thinking that's what I wanted to do. And at that point, Tim, as you can relate, at that point, and I loved it, but I wanted to cover the Cavs. But at that point, I was covering basically high school sports, high school football, basketball. For me, it was even some golf and swimming and wrestling and track and doing all those things. And I can remember coming on your show on the court side, and that was the first time really that maybe a month into the job covering the Cavs full time, and I remember sitting there thinking, here I am. Here's what I wanted to do, and I'm right here on the court, which I'd never really been at that time. Quicken Loans Arena. I'd never been that close before, so I know I never expressed that to you, but that was a big moment for me going on WEOL with you guys, and I always appreciated you guys having me on. So, and it's great to have you here as well.
Oh, thank you, Sam. I appreciate that. Yeah, we had a lot of fun on that show, and of course, you and I were both very, very close to my co-host Matt Lodi. Matt and I were great friends, and I know you and Matt were very, very close. And I'll give credit to Matt. It was Matt who said, I've got this friend, Sam Amico. I'm like, who? Sam Amico. We should have him on the show. And no, it was terrific. And I think about Matt a lot. I really do.
Yeah.
He's a great friend of both of ours, and we had a lot of fun on that show. So it brings back positive memories for me. So I'm glad it does for you as well. Those were great conversations. You're right.
Yeah. Tim, when did you start when was your first year? Was it 2020 with the Cavs?
So my first year, correct, was the 1920 season.
Okay.
Very sadly, Fred McLeod passed about 3 weeks before the season was to start. Had a fatal heart attack. So an unexpected passing, a tragic passing. And so the Cavaliers transitioned John Michael from radio to television. And to be honest, I was stunned and flabbergasted when they reached out to me and expressed interest in talking to me about doing radio play-by-play for the Cavaliers. And it happened all so quickly because of the fact that Fred passed in late September, and the Cavs' first game was mid-October. So my life turned upside down in about 7 days' time from working at WEOL and doing high school football and actually running the station. I was the general manager of the station. And 7 days later, I was in New York attending NBA broadcast meetings as the radio voice of the Cavs. It was a surreal time.
Did you expect, was this something that you had applied for at one point, or did this just totally come out of the blue when you were offered the job? Was it?
Well, the first time the job opened, was when Joe Tate retired,
right?
And so I did apply at that time. I applied for the job when Joe retired, and I went pretty deep into the process. Had several conversations with the folks at then Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, and had an opportunity to interview. And I mentioned, John Michael. John ended up getting the job. I know I was one of the finalists. I don't know if it came down to John and I, but John got the job. And listen, John's very talented, and now that I've come on board with the Cavs, he's become a great friend. I really get along very well with John. But the second time, as I said, was when Fred sadly passed, and I did not, apply for the job. Dave Dombrowski, director of broadcasting for the Cavaliers, actually reached out to me. He sent me an email, and it was an odd email from my perspective, because it simply said, I'd like as much of your work. Can you get me as much audio as quickly as possible? I'm sure you're aware of Fred's passing. And my assumption was that the Cavaliers would just replace Fred on the television side, that they would do a very quick search. So I thought, well, this is kind of strange. And obviously Dave didn't want to share with me what their plan was to transition John. So I was like, well, this is odd, but sure. and I recall in the email reply saying, Dave, I don't have any television work. I'm a radio guy, but here's some audio for you. And as I said, things kind of transpired quickly after that.
Yeah. How long were you at EOL?
27 years.
Yeah.
I started at WEOL in 1992, part-time, actually, just doing, Sam, you mentioned, football and basketball and, this and that, just as a part-time basis. And then the general manager at WEOL offered me a full-time job in sales. And I thought, you got to be crazy. I'm not a sales guy. But I was married and my wife and I had started a family. And I actually went to Joe Tate and said, I want to talk to you about this, because Joe and I had developed a relationship at that point. And, in a way that only Joe could say, Timothy, you take that sales job and you run with it. And,
that's fantastic. That sounded exactly like him, actually.
So I got into sales and then became the sales manager. And as I mentioned earlier, the actual general manager of the station. I was running the day-to-day operation, all the while still doing play-by-play. So I had a pretty full plate. But 27 years there, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that has a similar ring to what Terry Pluto told me when I was fresh out of college and my only job offer was in Rawlins, Wyoming, a town of 8,000. And, I'm an Akron, Ohio guy. So I asked Terry, what do I do? And he said, well, you have a couple options. You can take that job or you can go work at Foot Locker. Which do you prefer? So, you can be a sports writer or a shoe salesman, whichever you like.
Yeah.
So, that I took that message, moved to Wyoming. But were you originally from Northeast Ohio or upstate New York, or where?
No, my route to Ohio and the Joe Tate Perch at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse is a rather circuitous one. So Sam, you mentioned Western New York. I was actually born in between Buffalo and Rochester, up in the Western New York area. And people that know me or know of me, I'm a huge Bills fan. I'm a Bills Mafia guy. I've never had it disappear throughout my stops. But I moved away. Our family moved away from Western New York when I was about 7 years old, and we moved up to the New England area. My dad was in the newspaper business, not as a writer, but more on the management side of things. So he accepted a position in New Hampshire at a newspaper there. And then a few years later at another newspaper outside Providence, Rhode Island. So I was up in New England for about 10, 11 years, and then came to Ohio when he accepted a position with the Elyria Chronicle. If you know Bob Finan, Rick Noland, those guys. So, so my dad took a position with the Chronicle. So I moved to Ohio when I was a junior in high school. So that's when I became an Ohioan, and I've been here ever since.
Nice.
That's great. Tim, before we take a break, what advice would you give to any young aspiring radio or TV broadcasters out there who might be, have dreams of covering either a team or a big stage? What advice would you give someone like that?
Well, as Sam and I both alluded to, you're going to have to start somewhere. And no matter how small it is, approach that job with as much professionalism and as much energy and as much passion as you would, whether it's in Wyoming, Elyria, Ohio, or wherever it may be. Because that's how you're going to really develop the building blocks of your profession. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. I can't begin to tell you how many mistakes I made as a young broadcaster, but you'll learn from those. Be your own worst critic. Go back and listen to your work. I'm sure Sam with his writing and you guys with your audio, you go back and you listen to it. What do I like? What don't I like? Go to others within your profession and say, will you listen to my audio? Can you give me some pointers? Lord knows how many conversations Joe Tate and I had about that. We had a great relationship over the years, but don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. You never know when your break might come. Joe said to me many times, Timothy, you never know who's listening. And that's the truth. When the second time through with the Cavs position, I was amazed how many people within the organization had listened to me, whether they lived on the West Side and just like to listen to high school basketball, or if they had a nephew or a niece that was playing for some team. They were like, yeah, we know this guy. We've listened to him. So again, if I'm sitting in a gym at Keystone High School in LaGrange, I'm not thinking somebody from the Cavs front office is listening. So you never know who's listening. So, you better be giving it your 100% effort all of the time. And it's funny, I'm sure you guys are pressed for time here, but, real quick, when I was putting together audio for the first time I went through the Cavs job, Joe shared with me, don't send just highlights. Don't send, game-winning shots. He goes, everybody sounds great on those. Send me audio where you've got about a 20-point game in the third quarter and you're trying to keep it interesting and you're trying to keep those listeners locked in, because that's the mark of a pro. So don't ever think this is a crappy game and I'm just going to glide my way through it, because listeners will immediately leave at that point. Yeah. So there's a few tidbits, I guess, that I would offer.
No, I love it. And I think that's going to mean a lot to the people listening here. Well, Tim, we're going to take a quick break here with Sam Amico, Jeremy Powell, Tim Alcorn here at Cavs on the Break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Cavs, kind of the season at large, looking ahead at the playoffs and what this season means for this young team. Stick around, Cavs on the Break. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. It's John Tellage from the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast. Be sure to hop on with us to follow all the dramatic developments of the reigning American League Central Division champions. From game analysis to interviews to keeping tabs on who could be the next breakout star. We'll have that and much more right here. It's the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe here and join the fun.
What's up, everyone? I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Tybus Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need to get you through the regular season, hopeful postseason, and I'd say off-season, Tybus, but is there really ever an off-season for this team?
Thankfully for our podcast, Holly, there really never is when it comes to the Cleveland Browns. Don't miss our breakdown of each week's matchup, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we know, Holly, dogs gotta eat.
Yes, they do. So hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger, Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
The R&R podcast going to be rocking and rolling with you because football season is underway. College, Ohio State, the Power Fives, the MAC, the Browns. Michael Regai, are you ready to rock and roll with some football?
Kenny, I've been ready. This is our time of year. This is what R&R is all about. We're going to be with you every week. Kenny just said it. Browns, NFL, Ohio State centric. So you got to stay with us all fall and winter long here on R&R.
That's right. The Regai and Rhoda podcast coming to you here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe now and don't miss a show.
Hey everybody, I'm Gary.
And I'm Jason.
Opening cards as a kid, no matter what was in the pack, you always had that stick of chewing gum. Well, it turns out Gary and I opened up a box of 86 Tops last year, and let me tell you, the chewing gum does not age well.
Join us on the Ball Card Show,
the sports podcast for the sports collector.
We are back here, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Sam Amico, Jeremy Powell, Tim Alcorn, right here with us. Cavs on the Break. Tim, thanks for sharing your story. That was incredible. We want to talk Cavs with you because you are with the team every game. We do our best to watch every game, to cover every game. But Tim, you are there, and I want to start our Cavs discussion with this question. If you could summarize this season, there's 9 games left as of we're recording this on Monday night, March 20th. If you could summarize the season in one word, or the team in this season, one word, what word would you use?
Can I use 2?
Sure.
Surpassed expectations.
Okay. So would that be your expectations, or would you say the team's expectations?
Both. So let's go a little further into the weeds on that. Cavs were coming off of a 44-win season. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, right before Labor Day weekend, the blockbuster deal for Donovan Mitchell is announced. Yep. So I think the Cavs internally, and yes, me personally, were thinking, okay, you're coming off a 44-win season. You've got Donovan Mitchell, but there's going to be a getting to know each other process with one another. But to me, how quickly he acclimated himself to his teammates and the Cleveland community, and what this team has been able to accomplish has exceeded expectations. And I don't mean that just in the win-loss column. The way they're playing, the best defensive team in the league stat-wise, net rating, opponents' points per game, holding teams below 100. I don't think anybody anticipated this. And I always like to do, if I had told you at the end of training camp or preseason or even before the start of the season, we're going to be sitting here, as you just said, on Monday, March 20th, the Cavs are going to be at 45 wins. They're going to be sitting number 4 in the Eastern Conference. Number 1, I think 100% everybody would have said, heck yeah, we're going to take that. And if I had said, would you believe that? I don't know if everybody would have believed that. So that's where I say surpassed expectations.
Yeah. Jay, what do you think about that, man?
I think I agree with them. I think that, if you remember at the media day that you were at, Kobe and the boys, they actually tried to temper expectations a little bit.
For sure.
Because maybe they weren't 100% sure, because it does take time to gel. Look, it's the NBA, right? So I agree with that. I think they have exceeded expectations. I think if you would have told us before the season that we'd be looking at probably the 4th seed, home court advantage, first round of the playoffs, we'd say, maybe not. So I think I agree with that. Tim, question for you. Evan Mobley obviously is a tremendous talent, maybe one of the more talented big men to come in the league in the last 5 years. Who does he remind you of? Is there a player, past or present, that Evan Mobley's game reminds you of?
I think right out of the chute, I would say Bosh. I know there were a lot of comparisons to Bosh. The thing that I find interesting is that he seems so comfortable at that center spot, which of course is where he played at USC, and not that he's not comfortable out on the wing or as a forward, but I see him developing that inside game a lot more. So I think that's where his future lies, and I don't mean that in the sense of he's going to displace Jared Allen, but so I'm not sure, when you look at that hybrid type player, who it would be, but I think the sky's the limit for Evan Mobley. I think his trajectory, at some point, he'll be the best player on this Cavalier team. He isn't right now, but he's only in his 2nd year. He still has a lot of skill development ahead of him, and I think at some point, once Evan gets to that elite superstar status, is when you'll be talking about the Cavaliers competing for NBA championships.
So, Tim, my dream of Point Mobley is I need to stop with those sweet dreams of seeing Point Mobley on the court. Because that's my dream. Unleash Point Mobley. Let's see it. I need to let that go. Let that out to pasture.
It honestly feels like, though, Tim, see if you agree with this, and I've tweeted about this a little bit and talked about it on here, that once they started using him more as a traditional big man post player is when his game really took off this year. There was some talk early that maybe he hadn't taken as big a step as people thought from year 1 to year 2, but it feels like when he started playing more, like you said, more like a center, a traditional post player on the offensive end, his game really did seem to take off. You agree with that?
Absolutely. I love that little hook shot that he's developed in the lane. I love that little turnaround bank shot that he's working on and is developing to the left of the lane or to the right of the lane. You can see his offensive game developing. You can also see him, which I think we all anticipated, but he's getting physically stronger. He has really gone to work in the weight room. So when he gets down in the tall timber, as Joe used to call it, when he's down there banging bodies, it doesn't impact him like it did last year. And I think he's also learning the NBA game, and that takes time. I think if you go back and look at video of Evan last year, he would shy away from contact. Well, now he's lifting weights. He's getting bigger. He'll lower his body into the defender, or he'll take advantage if he has a mismatch down in that low block. So I think you're seeing a maturation both physically and mentally with Evan Mobley.
Tim, how much has chemistry impacted the team this year? Because I don't think they would have exceeded those expectations you talked about if they didn't have incredible chemistry just from the jump. And it seemed like that's been another kind of reoccurring theme throughout the year.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct on that. And I'm not saying that just because I work for the Cavaliers and they sign my paycheck. This is a very tight group. They get along very, very well. Practice sessions, on the bus, at the hotel. They're hanging out together. They're eating dinner together. There's a lot of chatter on the bus as those guys are chatting with one another. It's a very tight group. And we've all been around teams, and it doesn't matter what the level, NBA, college, high school, if there's a cancer on the team or if there's an issue with the team, you can feel it. You just know it. And that's not the case with this basketball club. They are very, very tight. And again, I go back to the comments I made earlier about the acquisition of Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell, to his credit, didn't come in here going, I'm a 3-time All-Star. I'm going to be the face of this franchise. I'm going to be the guy. Donovan Mitchell came in and said, what do I need to do to become a member of this team, to join this brotherhood, if you want to phrase it that way, that you guys have established? And so I think once he showed them that I want to be a part of what you're doing, I don't need all of you guys to follow me. I want to join with you. I think that was huge, and I think that played a big impact insofar as the chemistry of the team this year. Not that they weren't tight last year, but it certainly helped it going forward.
Sam, are you surprised or not surprised that the release of Kevin Love didn't impact the team's chemistry? It doesn't seem to impact the team's chemistry.
I'm not necessarily surprised. I think that it was kind of because there was very little drama. It was very professional in the way that he was let go. And he had good rapport with his teammates. And, Evan Mobley, Garland, those guys all said, yeah, we're bummed. But, we also understand from both points of view, from both Kevin's and from the Cavs. So I'm not surprised. And it kind of goes back to what Tim was talking about, kind of the culture around the team. What starts with Kobe Altman and JB Bickerstaff and, the rest of the front office and the players. They really have acquired players. One time I asked Greg Popovich and I said, the Spurs never really have any of that kind of NBA drama. This, of course, was before DeMar DeRozan demanded a trade back in the day, and Kawhi Leonard wanted a trade. But
LaMarcus Aldridge.
Yeah, LaMarcus Aldridge. Well, at one point, this is like 2014, but it really kind of stuck with me. And it seems to be relatable to today's Cavs. Greg Popovich says, we draft players and go after players who have gotten over themselves. And as good as Donovan Mitchell is, that's the kind of guy he was. I was impressed with Mitchell before he ever came to the Cavs, not just as a player, but when Utah this summer was gutting the roster, hiring a first-time head coach, and making it clear we're going through a rebuilding stage. Donovan Mitchell not only didn't ask for a trade or seek a trade, he made it clear, look, I'm here. I'm under contract with you guys. I'm here. I'm going to play my best and play my hardest regardless. And he made that very clear. And, a lot of times in today, understandably so, a star player is going to say, look, I want nothing to do with this situation where you're rebuilding and trading all of the veteran players. And so before Donovan Mitchell ever even got to Cleveland, I was very impressed with that. And then when he showed up, you could see, yeah, that's for real. He's really that kind of guy. And I think that goes a long way toward, when situations like the Kevin Love situation arise, that, yeah, you're disappointed that maybe he didn't, he wasn't here for the end of it, end of this run this season. But at the same time, your culture is strong enough, your foundation is strong enough that it doesn't disrupt anything. So now it didn't really surprise me, Chase, to be real honest with you.
I got a question for Tim and Sam. See what you guys think about this. Do you think if the Cavs knew now what they knew then, with maybe Dean Wade not quite playing up to what they thought, having a little depth issue in the front court, do you think they still would have let Kevin Love go?
Sam, you want to start? Go ahead.
Do I think they still would have let Kevin Love go if they were having that Dean Wade was kind of struggling?
Yeah, and they didn't. Maybe I think it's a fair assessment to say maybe they're missing a little depth in the front court currently.
Yeah.
Do you think if they knew that then, what they know now, would they still have let Kevin Love go?
I think they would have. And I think that there's, part of it is sometimes when guys are struggling, maybe Dean's laboring a little bit because his injury might be lingering. Sometimes you just got to let guys play out of things, out of situations, and not give up on a player just because he's had a bad 3 weeks or so, and I think that that's part of building a strong foundation too, especially a younger guy, kind of like Dean Wade. And as a team, have they suffered? I don't think so. Jeremy, I think that they're about where they're where they hoped. I think they're even better than they hoped. You think about, okay, yeah, for the Cavaliers, we've got the number 4 seed. We've got an opportunity to get out of the first round because we're going to probably have home court advantage in the first round. And, look, maybe if Brooklyn didn't blow up the team, then we're in a different spot. But here we are right now. We're in a very good spot. We're playing well. You could compare this year's team to last year's team after the All-Star break when Jared Allen went down. It's a whole different ballgame, So yeah. I think big picture wise, and that's kind of what they're looking at this year. Well, we were probably going to part with Kevin after the season anyway. We were going to use that next transactional phase over the summer to bring somebody new in. So I think that they're still looking to upgrade in the front court. It just happened a little sooner than they wanted. And yeah, I mean, if Dean Wade had been struggling this much and kind of been playing uneven like he is a little bit now, then yeah, maybe they would have reconsidered to wait till the end of the season. But I don't think it would have been if Kevin wanted a buyout, I'm sure they would have given him one.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I thought both sides handled what could have been a very, very difficult situation well. You didn't hear any sources close to Kevin Love or, Kevin Love is supposedly very unhappy. So Kevin pretty much kept his emotions intact and really didn't go, crying or whining to anybody. He's the ultra competitor. He wants to play. The guy may end up in the Hall of Fame. So he was an elite player in the NBA. And the only thing that I would say is that you can't really look at it in a hindsight's 2020 because it wasn't like Kevin Love was playing. He was getting playing time, and then they let him go or didn't play him anymore is a better way to frame it and say it, because they didn't play him a lot and then say, well, now we're going to bench you for Dean Wade. Kevin wasn't playing anyway, right? So that's why Dean Wade was getting that playing time. And Kevin not playing is what led to him going to the front office and saying, I want to play. I want to play somewhere. And I thought the front office handled it well and saying, everything you've done for this organization, we respect that, we appreciate that, and we'll work with you on that.
Man, Tim, talking about the team expectations at the start of the season, Donovan Mitchell's chemistry and Kevin Love Hall of Fame pedigree, you'd fit right into Cavs on the Break. That's pretty much been what we've talking about, man. You're right there with us, bro. It's great. It's great. So here we are, in just a few more moments here. The Cavs, like, as you mentioned, Tim, are fourth in the East. Looking at home court advantage, or staring at square in the face. We are 2.5 games over the Knicks, who are in the 5th seed. Tim,
they lost tonight, by the way.
Do you think the Cavs can get the 53 wins? We haven't hit the 53 win mark since I haven't here in my notes since 2014. Do you think we can get to that 53 win mark?
That's 8-1 down the stretch.
Yeah, baby. Welcome to podcasting, Tim.
Welcome to podcasting. Hey, you got to give Tim some background on Chase. Chase is overly optimistic pretty much all the time.
I will say this. The schedule for the final 9 games is favorable. This really worked out to the Cavs' advantage as far as how the final 9 games fall. There aren't any back-to-backs. You've got Orlando twice. You've got Charlotte. You've got Atlanta. You've got Indiana. 8 out of 9. I don't know. That's pretty tough to gauge. But I do like the way these final 9 games are set up. I will say this, and again, I'm just saying this as Tim Alcorn, not as a Cavs employee. But I will say that March 31st game against the Knicks, to me, that shapes up as a huge
yes, sir,
game. That's in my opinion, that's going to be the one that's going to tell everybody where we're going to finish, where they're going to finish. If the Cavs get that one, now you split the 4 games between the Knicks, and good Lord, look out for a first round best of 7 series between the Cavs and the Knicks. That could be a lot of fun. I don't know about 8 out of 9.
Well, we'll come back down to earth. We're in the podcast stratosphere there at the 53, but you feeling good at maybe 50 wins? Can we at least?
Yes.
Okay. That's a little more, and no one can see, but everyone here on the dais is nodding their heads like 50 wins. Yes, Chase, that's the right number. I don't see why 50. Hey, I look at 53. I'm like, yo, that is, I'm ready for 53 over here. And when it happens, you know where you heard it first. Let me just tell you.
That's because you're the kind of guy that you give $1 million to and you go, okay, that's nice. I appreciate that. Is there any way we can get to? Can we get 2 million? But
I just go back to if I had told you. If I had told you at the end of 82 games, Cavs are sitting at number 4 and home court in the first round, I don't care if that number is 50, 51, or Chase 53. Give me 4 seed and home court in the first round.
All right. So, and Tim, one more question. Oh, go ahead, Jay.
Real quick, Tim. This is a little off subject, but what do you think of the NBA going to these 2 games and 3 nights in the same city trips?
Awesome in Miami. No, to be honest, I kind of like it. You get to settle in. It has a little bit of a baseball flavor to it where you have a series, even though there's the off day in between. What I like is it gives the guys a feel of what playoff basketball is going to be about. That we play Brooklyn twice in the next 3 days. That's exactly what would happen in the playoffs. You'd play a game, you'd get a day off, you'd play, game 2 if it was on their floor, or game 4, if we had home court advantage. But it really is giving the guys a feel of what playoff preparation and playing a team back to back in a sense with the day off in between is going to be about. I think it's going to prep them well for postseason.
Yep. Love that. Tim, on our last episode, we talked about our easiest outs of the rounds and our hardest teams that we don't want to play. in the playoffs and teams that would maybe be the easiest teams to win. So let's look ahead to the second round. Cause again, we're podcasting. We're always looking of those three teams above us. You have the Bucks, the Sixers, and the Celtics. That's their seeding right now. Which of those teams would you rather play in the second round? So we're looking at teams that we feel that we like our chances the most to make the Eastern Conference Finals. Which of those three teams would you rather play in the second round?
Boston.
Interesting.
I think we match up well with Boston. I think the games against the Celtics this year have shown that. And I don't think the Cavaliers fear the Celtics. I don't think they fear anybody. I don't mean it in that sense, but I don't think they look at the Celtics, even though they're the defending Eastern Conference champs, and go, that's daunting. I don't think the Cavaliers feel that way at all. And I think on paper, I think it's a matchup that I think the Cavs actually fare very well in.
So would you say that you picked? Yeah, that's what everyone but me picked the Celtics. I would rather play the 76ers, even though we haven't beat them this year. I would rather play. You're trying to, Sam, to make me sound like I don't know what I'm talking about again, Sam. Sam's just fishing for me to go on my whole Embiid thing and Harden playoff thing. Anyway, so Tim, in a series against the Celtics, would you say we would have the best player on the court, or would you still give that nod to the Celtics in a series against the Celtics?
Well, Jason Tatum is in a lot of MVP conversations. He's an elite player, and I'm not saying Donovan Mitchell isn't, but Jason Tatum has taken it to that next level.
Yeah,
I think Donovan Mitchell will at some point. Maybe it'll be this postseason for the Cavaliers, but I'll tell you what, I'll take my chances with Donovan Mitchell.
Yes. Yep. Well, Tim, thank you for taking a chance with us tonight. Tim, thank you so much, man. This has been so great. I've loved hearing your story and just talking basketball with you, man. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on Cavs on the Break.
Oh, man, I loved it. This was a lot of fun to chat Cavs and chat NBA with you guys. And, hey, anytime you want to do it again, let me know. I'll be more than glad to come on. Maybe we can do one during the playoffs.
Would love that. That does it for this episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Thank you all so much for downloading and listening. Shouts to the Press Play Podcast Network for making this possible. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Cavs on the Break. We always follow back. You can follow Sam on Twitter at Amico Hoops. Get all of his works and writings at hoopswire.com and at Wire Hoops. You can follow Jeremy on Twitter at Jeremy and Akron, and follow Mr. Tim Alcorn on Twitter at Cavs Alcorn. Tim, every episode we give away a Junkyard Dog Award to the person who does the best. And sir, I got to say, tonight you receive our Junkyard Dog Award. Tim Alcorn, congratulations.
Yes, sir. Let's go.
Wow, do I get the group picture like the Cavs do, where they all surround you and I get to hold up the medal?
We even got them. Look, we all got the Junkyard Dog Awards at home here.
That's awesome. That's great. I love it.
Tim,
I will cherish that.
Congratulations, man. Congratulations. Do you have any final thoughts for us, Tim, before we exit here?
No, you guys do a great job. I really appreciate you having me on, and I've enjoyed this. Good to chat with Sam again and meet you guys. And again, anytime you want to do it again, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. It was a thoughtful, engaging conversation. It was fun.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, Mike Breen, take us out.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.